In this video, continue with equation of ellipse. We're going to have, for this example, endpoints of major axis, which is 15, 10, and -7, 10. Endpoints of minor axis, 4, 14, and 4, 6. So here's our two endpoints for minor axis and our two endpoints for major axis. Now, let me point out that when we're comparing these 2 points for each of the major axis and minor axis, I notice that my 10 were repeating, so therefore my k is positive 10. Here, the 4 were repeating in the minor axis, so therefore my h equals to a positive 4. So we got our h and we got our k. Now we need to find the values for a squared, b squared, but we don't know which form to use yet. And I'll talk about that after we find our b squared and our a squared values. Now, in order to determine we're going to have to find the distance between these two endpoints. Now, major axis and minor axis, once we find the distance, we're going to have to take the half of it. So let's work them out. Now, in order to find the distance between the 2 points for major axis and the 2 points for minor axis, we're going to use these formulas, which is x1 minus x2 divided by 2 within the absolute value, because distance will always equal to a positive number. Same thing can apply for the y values, y minus y2 over 2 within the absolute value. Now, the reason we have the form for x and form for y does not mean that you do it for both x and y. You do it according to what is different. So for the major axis, our x values are different. So I would use this. Be in mind, don't forget that sometimes you can actually have the same x values but different y values for major axis. So major axis, you can have different x values or different y values. But in this example, we have different x values. So I'm going to use this. For minor axis, we have different y values, so we're going to use this. But it could be reversed in a different example or a different problem. So let's work out the major axis. And I'm just going to write major. We're going to plug in the values for x1 and x2, which is 15 minus -7 over 2 within absolute value. That will become 22 over 2, which will equal to absolute value of 11, which is just 11. Now, what was the point of having an absolute value? Well, the reason is you don't always have to start out with the number that's in the left side as the first number. You can choose to use the second one, which is -7. So let's use -7. So -7 minus, for x2, I'm going to use 15 over 2, and again, inside the absolute value will equal to -7 minus 15, which will be -22 over 2 within the absolute value. -22 divided by 2, -11. And then the absolute value of it is 11. So that's why we have the absolute value, because we want a positive number for distance. So again, when it comes to like time, when it comes to distance, when it comes to measurements, you see it's always going to be a positive number, never going to be negative numbers or numbers that goes below 0. So make sure you remember that when we're finding the distance, we have absolute value. So for major, which is A, 11. Alright, next I'm going to do the work for minor. So I'm going to erase to make more room. So for minor, here the y values are different, so we're going to use this formula. And again, it doesn't matter which order you use. You can use the 14 first for y1, or you can use the 6 for y1. It's going to come out the same number after you do the absolute value. Now if you do the double check it and it comes out different, then I highly recommend to double check your work. So my y1, I'm going to use 14 minus my y2, I'm going to use 6 divided by 2, and again inside the absolute value, 14 minus 6, 8 divided by 2, 8 divided by 2, which is 4. The absolute value of 4 is 4. So for my minor, b is equal to 4. Alright, so there we got our a and b value. So I'm going to erase to write out our final answer. Now before that, in the formula, in the standard form, we need a squared. So a squared, which is square of 11, that's 121. Let me write it properly. Since I'm squaring a, if I square 11, it will equal to 121. If I square b, which becomes b squared, then that means I'm going to square the 4, which will become 16. So a squared is 121, and b squared is 16. So, in our final answer, well, let's skip a step. Now, before we can actually do our final answer, there's a little information that you should write down, which I'm going to write for you. Alright. This should be in your notes, so make some room for your final answer, and then you're going to copy this down. Now, major axis and x coordinate the same. So when you read, just like in this example, which our x coordinates is different, meaning our y coordinates, this ties into this. So if your major axis and your x coordinates are the same, therefore the a square is with y minus k squared. So had the major axis with the x coordinates here, 15 and negative 7, they're different. Had they been the same number, then we would have used this form. Now if major axis and y coordinates the same, so if the major axis and the y coordinates are the same, which in this example they are, so the a square is with x minus h squared. So that means we're actually going to use this standard form right here. So I'm going to make a star next to it. So make sure you have this note. Make sure you write that down. So let me repeat. If the major axis and the x coordinate is the same, the a square is with the square of y minus k, which in this case is not. If the major axis and the y coordinates the same, then therefore a square is with the square of x minus h. So we're going to use this standard form. So again, make sure to have this within your notes. Alright, I'm going to erase and write out the final answer. So is going to be x minus, since my h value is positive 4, I'm just going to plug it in, the square of it, over my a squared, which is 121, plus y minus, so since my k value is positive 10, I'm just going to plug it in, and my b squared is 16, equal to 1. So that's our equation for ellipse. Therefore, our final answer so the square of x minus 4 over 121 plus the square of y minus 10 over 16 equal to 1. Our final answer.